cleanse your space emotionally. I did that at a very young age, and it's specifically about my father. Yeah. I had so much hate. Like, that was the word. I hated him. And now he's just a human being existing somewhere that I don't have contact with him. But I'm so glad that I don't have hate anymore. And he never said sorry. Yeah. And it was me and God. Yeah. I was like, God, I don't want to feel this anymore. I understand it was the best for me. And I just want to let it go.
En un mundo lleno de un montón de información, we wish to share our truth with you, as two bilingual latinas en Nueva York.
La mayoría de cosas que hablaremos serán basadas en nuestra experiencia, and we invite you to join us on this journey. Welcome to Talk con Nosotras con Hellen y
Steph. Hi everyone. We have a friend here today. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Introduce yourself.
Mi nombre es Gabriel. My name is Gabriel.
Bienvenido, Gabriel.
Welcome.
Y vengo desde la Isla del Encanto, Puerto Rico.
Puerto Rico. Nice. Thanks for coming all this way.
Happy to be here.
Yay. We're in a little different space today, but that's okay. So tell us a little bit about yourself, Gabriel. What do you do?
So I love to travel. Hence part why I'm here, in addition to being with you guys. But I love to travel all over the world. And along with that travel, I like to do different mission projects. I'm actually going off on a big mission trip here soon.
You want to tell us a little bit about that?
Well, it's overseas. It's in Europe, and it's not where a lot of people would think to go, but or would want to go. But it's going to be in Ukraine. So I'm going to be there with a couple of friends and a small group there, as we're bringing a little hope to that part of the world.
That's awesome. I think every place needs a little bit of hope, especially going through that difficult time.
Yes. How do you find us?
I found you guys on Instagram, so if you're not following them already, make sure to do that.
At Talk con Nosotras everywhere. Yay! And you actually found us through a group chat. Wasn't that how it started before, or was it Instagram first?
Instagram first, first, and I think you guys...
Shout out to SEO.
Well, you guys are part of Advent Health too. Advent Hope. So that's when I'm in town. I usually like to visit there too. I was happy to know you guys are going there too. So yeah, a lot of small connections in this little bubble.
Very true. Well, thank you again for being here today. Today's a packed episode, but I think it's something that needs to be spoken about more. And let's just get straight into it.
Yeah, we're talking about generational.
It is a topic. I'm not gonna lie.
Trauma generacional. How about that? Generational traumas. It's too early for me to speak English.
En español, vete con el español.
Trauma generacional.
I know.
Y bueno, I know Gabriel's gonna talk a little bit about Abraham. You want to start with that?
Yeah. So as we look at the Bible, and sometimes even within our own family, we see different reoccurring cycles, whether it's addiction or certain personality traits. And it's interesting in the Bible where we see these generational cycles play out. We see with Abraham, he was deceptive, when it came to Pharaoh, he lied about who his wife was. And then we see that again happening with his son, and then later on with Jacob his name is literally the usurper, the deceiver. So it's a generational trait that we see persisting throughout the story, in the story of Abraham in the Bible. But also as we look a little bit closer in our families, sometimes we see certain recurring traits and cycles. And so it's interesting, I'm happy to be talking with you guys today, see what we can do to address some of these things, address some of these emotional scars and traumas that just keep happening generation to generation, maybe in your family too.
Do you feel like when you said that so for the story of Abraham, there's a level of deception that we see kind of transfer from generation to generation? Do you think sometimes it's like something that we learn, something that's automatic? Like, how does it come about that these families kind of did the same thing?
That's a great way to look at it, yeah. Some of it is, like the nurture versus nature, but a lot of it is our learned behavior.
Yeah.
And a lot of it is what we see from our parents, what they saw from their parents, what they saw from their parents generations down. And it could be, I mean, if we're looking at modern context, sometimes how we view finances, sometimes how we view conflict, as we saw our parents do it, our fathers or mothers, we tend to repeat that. In Abraham's story, it's interestingly as well, because as I've looked at that story, we usually think a lot about when God had asked him to sacrifice Isaac. But when we look at that story, Abraham doesn't really ask God how, because he knows how already. From his father, from their culture, that was common to sacrifice their firstborn. So again, these were traits and traditions, that they had taken from each other.
Yeah, and about her questions, like, what do you think it comes with? Is because they saw an example, or is because you're just passing it in your blood? Like, what do you think?
Well, I think we learn from our fathers, and I mean, we learn from our mothers too. What they knew is what they teach us. So we perpetuate whatever they knew. Maybe it's in modern context, if it's regarding finances, if it's regarding conflict, we tend to respond similar to our parents.
Right.
That's what's interesting. About the gospel of Jesus. It helps us reflect upon that, see what things are healthy in those generational traditions and what's not, so we can break them if that's a situation. And deal a lot of it with emotional trauma, because all of these generational curses are tied with emotional trauma as well.
And it starts as children, right? We just follow example of our fathers and mothers, our family. It's like we don't know better.
And I like that you mentioned Jacob, because this is I don't know, this story for me is like ambigua. It's like sometimes I'm on his side, sometimes I'm not. But like there are things that you cannot change, like being el primogénito. And you were born first, like you cannot change that, and that comes with a blessing. And he wanted that. For what reason? I don't know, power, love. Maybe he didn't feel the same love. And that's their parents' fault when a son doesn't feel the same as the other one. But that was the culture.
La mamá le ayuda en la decepción.
La mamá. So that's crazy. It's like even if he was having these delusions, the mom was like feeding them. So, and then he comes, and then he doesn't treat his brother. He's a grown ass man. I don't know if I can say that.
I mean, yeah.
And then I don't know, like, and then but he was trying to treat his own father. And then there is this verse, and in verse Genesis 27:12 that says, "What if my father touches me?" So he's already thinking about how to go about the father, because the father doesn't know what's going on. So they're gonna lie, and they do this like fake hair on his arm because the oldest one is hairy, etc., etc. And then like it's like a whole como un nudo de mentiras that they create, and then the mom is there like helping, and then at the end he gets what he wanted, but like he has to go away. Like it's not like, even though he thought that's what was gonna make him happy, let's use that word, and it didn't, because it was all lies and trying to like. So I don't know if he has something to do with Abraham, That's why I'm like, they're not like right there. But that's why I asked, like, it comes in your blood, or you were taught that, or just because your mom was helping him. You know what I mean?
Es interesante porque Dios le hizo una promesa a Abraham, y también Dios le hizo una promesa a Jacob. And for both of them, and trying to help God for that.
Can we turn that on?
Just kidding.
My bad.
This is not sponsored by Apple.
I wish.
So it's interesting que God promised Abraham something, y también Dios le prometió a Jacob algo. Pero donde empezó la decepción, cuando ellos estaban intentando ayudar a Dios en la promesa que le había dado. For Abraham, it was, I'm going to give you a son, and out of that, son, you're going to have many generations. And what did Abraham do? you try to speed up the process with
another.
Exactly, with Hagar. With Jacob, it was the same thing. God was like, yeah, you're the secondborn, but you will have the inheritance as the firstborn. But what did Jacob do? He did the deception with his mom, with, as you were saying, with the hair on the arms and all that foolishness, because he was trying to help God. But what really he was doing was deceiving himself.
Yeah, that's
the moral of the story.
crazy.
You lie to yourself at the end of the day, and you lie to God.
It's like, where's the trust in God? It's because, okay, God promised me a house, so I'm gonna cheat, I'm gonna rob, I'm gonna make dirty money to make the house because He promised me the house. No, like He didn't ask you to do anything. That's the story. Like, and let's go. Like, why don't we wait on Him? You know what I mean? So, okay, so the mom and then the brother, I think the brother helped too. It's like, how can you sell tu primogenitura? I don't know how to say primogenitura in English.
Birthright.
Your birthright. Okay. So yeah, it's like, I don't know. It's crazy. But like, if we continue in that bloodline,
we have Joseph, right?
Okay, we already talked Abraham, Jacob,
the son, and now the grandson, Joseph, son of Jacob, right? And in Genesis, it was a lot of chapters. From 37 to 50, we hear about Joseph. So he was, again, another beloved son, right? And we have that word, and it's like, it can almost seem like favor. It can look like favoritism, which a lot of parents do to their children. So he was the most beloved son, right? And in contrast, his brothers hated him for that. They envied him, right? So they were angry. They were jealous of his gifts. He was very smart, very talented. So what did they do? They sold him to slavery. They sold him to, I think it was the Midianites, right? And but I feel like what we see here is, I think we see like a break of this generational curse. Because Joseph could have carried this anger. He could have carried this hate toward his brothers for selling him. First of all, not only selling him to slavery, leaving him to die. Their initial their initial plan was, they left him in a pit and they lied to his father Jacob, and they lied about his death, right? But he was still alive technically, right? So much was going on, and we see, like, I feel like I said, we see like a breaking of this curse, because how did Joseph respond? He responded in a way of mercy. I think this is an example of like what a healed person who has experienced trauma looks like. What he says in Genesis 45, verse 5, "But don't be upset and don't be angry with yourselves for selling me to this place. It was God who sent me here ahead of you to preserve your lives." What? Like, how does one have so much wisdom and, again, like that emotional intelligence to respond to his brothers that way?
What do you think it is?
The Holy Spirit.
It's like
there's no other way.
When you trust Him, it's crazy because, sorry, I interrupt.
That's okay.
It's like, again, God promised something to Abraham, something to Jacob, and something to Joseph. And who was the only one who listened and waited patiently? Joseph.
And sometimes I do think, okay, yes, Joseph was sold into slavery, but then he had all this power. He had all this favor. I wonder, did that help him act in that way? Now that he was at this certain level of status and importance, like he was basically the left hand to the king, to the Pharaoh.
Leading up to that, though, there were some moments where God humbled him, though. Because if we look at the story, you mentioned Abraham again, like God had a promise for him, He had a promise for Jacob, and now He had a promise for Joseph. If y'all remember early in the story, he had a dream that he would be over his family. And that's the reason why, part of the reason why it's on slavery. They're like, really? You're trying to say you're going to be above us? You're like a little runt, like, como que vas a estar pasando, like,
I love it. I love that story because he never meant to say it that way. He was just telling his dreams. Like, ¿cómo se llaman eso? Los cosas de que his brothers will bend to his
bow.
Wow, yeah.
Pero, ¿cómo se llama lo que él veía en los sueños? El trigo.
El trigo, sí.
Eran como unos cosas
The
de
wheat,
trigo.
el trigo.
Sí. Entonces, el de José se quedaba en la mitad y el de sus hermanos, they will bow to Joseph. That was crazy. Imagine like having your little brother telling you that.
Y eso fue la promesa que Dios le dio. Pero vemos algo interesante con José comparado a su padre y su abuelo, was that there was an opportunity for him to, quote unquote, help God in this process. When he was working for Potiphar, you know, his wife tried to do some sneaky things there. He could have been like, if with this process, he could have maybe thought, I could be with her, and maybe we eventually get rid of Potiphar, and then I have the power and this and that.
Yeah.
But what did he do? He was like, no, I ain't having none of that. I'm respectful to Potiphar. I'm respectful to God, even though this has been a process, even though he's basically a slave. You know, he's a slave with some rights. But God, you know, but he said, no, God, use that opportunity to teach him when you have the real power, what you are intended to do with it, to be responsible and help your family.
Yeah, that goes with what I said about the house. Okay, God promised me a house so I can do anything about it. So here's when like the mortals come. Like God will never ask you to do anything like that unless he's like, well, there's one episode in the Bible that we're not gonna talk about that one now. I like that you said like Joseph didn't use that as an excuse to like sin and do the things on his own way. He waited on his God and his promises and those dreams that God put on him.
Yeah, and we can use that again. Everything in the Bible helps us to one, like relate to these characters, knowing that like everything that we go through is intentional. It's for a reason, right? God doesn't do anything in vain. You don't go through anything in vain. And Jesus knew what it was to suffer, right? So it's like he knew what it was to suffer. The God we worship is not a distant God. He's there through all these traumas that we experience. He's there through all these curses. So, you know, a very popular verse in James 1:2, we're told to consider it pure joy when we experience pain. And like I said, Jesus also experienced this when his close cousin Lazarus passed away. He felt that pain. He knew what it was like to, you know, not necessarily rejoice, right? Like our initial feeling, our initial emotional connection to pain and sadness is sadness. Like that's how as humans we operate. But the truth is that we're called to recognize that it's through these trials and suffering that we can get closer to God.
So it's interesting to think, you know, like as we look at all these people we're talking about and other characters in the Bible, they experience suffering, some kind of trauma, some sadness, and I mean even some of the prophets, it's thought that they even experience depression. You know, Jeremiah, Elijah, you know, like where we see them in the scripture, they're encountering like very difficult time, you know, emotionally. And so, and it's interesting because again, like the one person, you know, which you were mentioning a moment ago, Jesus, like he can empathize, you know, he's not just distant, but él tiene empatía a la causa de nosotros.
Sí. Oh, I wanted to mention somebody like traumas. Here's the thing, like it can be generational, okay, or you can be the first person experiencing that, right? And with Jesus, usually everything is new, and some things that happen to us as Christians can be very traumatic. It's these people that they always had like a normal life, but then they start following Jesus and things start happening to them.
Warfare.
That is like, wow. And then, so Jesus went through a lot because he was constantly being attacked by the enemy. He wasn't going to leave him alone. He's like, what are you doing here? This is my territory. So, and then we go until the end when Jesus sudó sangre.
Yeah.
You know, then the level of stress that you have to be to que la sangre salga de los poros de tu piel. You know,
that's a real thing. That's a science. Like,
It is.
scientifically, it exists.
it is. So he experienced that. So whatever you have felt, like he felt it too. Like he's been there. And then he asked God, and he's like, Padre, si es posible, pasa de mí esta copa. Like, si es posible, no dejes que esto me pase a mí. And God just was quiet.
We saw the human. We really did.
Yeah.
In Jesus.
So he that's like the biggest example that we know about Jesus. And then he experienced physical trauma. That was like psychological trauma, and then he went to physical trauma. So whatever you've been through, pain, like in your mental health or your physical, he already experienced. So he gets you, he understands you. And then he tried to get away. Like he tried to like, hey, God, I don't want to be. And then God's like, this is the only way. And he did that for us. Like, what are we doing?
Right.
So I feel like with him and his cousin,
Lazarus.
and then el otro,
Oh.
They were cousins?
Yeah.
Juan.
Juan was cousins.
Yeah, Juan.
Yeah.
He wasn't cousins with Lazarus?
I know.
I mean, they were like family, but they were good friends, but...
So yeah, I was talking about Juan.
Now, I'm gonna just
Am I thinking of The Chosen?
Let me do it again. So his cousin, Juan. So I like because his mother couldn't have kids. I'm just telling a lot of things coming to my mind is like, and then the promise was you're gonna have a kid.
Mm-hmm.
And she was super old, and then she has this kid that is leading and está abriendo el camino para quién? Para Jesus, para Jesús. And then what happens to him? He suffers, he eats like he's in the wilderness, he doesn't have clothes, he doesn't have a home, he's just preaching, he's doing too many stuff, and that's because of Jesus, because that was he was supposed to do. And then the way that he dies.
Yeah.
And I know he was happy to do that, to die for Jesus. Sometimes we don't see it like that. We see suffering. And then it's like, no, I don't want to suffer. I don't want to do this. Like, why, Jesus? He didn't promise you that you weren't going to suffer.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So, again, he gets everything that we go through. And then, if you come and follow him, you may experience the same as him, his disciples, his family. Everybody around Jesus suffered, you know? So, bringing it to us, like on our personal experiences.
We about to get vulnerable, y'all.
Yeah, I can just keep talking about my experience, and then we can.
So before you go in, like, how can what we've spoken about generational traumas in different people in the Bible, how can that affect us as humans on Earth in this dark world right now? How can it affect our walk as believers?
I don't think my family affects me. So for me, maybe I broke it, like the curse, like with me it stopped.
Okay. How?
So far. So my family, we come from like muy mala administración, pobreza, despilfarro de dinero, muchas cosas. And then la pobreza viene como en nuestra generación y fue pasada a mi mamá. And then my mom, she got out of there, she got a good job, but then she had kids when she didn't plan it. And then the parents, los papás de los hijos, they weren't there. So it's like, and then you go half of my it's crazy. I don't know where to take it. Because for me, that has affected me. It's like, I don't want to have kids. I already have nephews and nieces. And I don't want to bring kids to suffer the way that I might have suffered. Because I grew up, I didn't have everything I wanted, which was good. Now I see it as something good. I grew up without a father, which is good now, knowing the person that he is. You know what I mean? So that, yeah. And then I see other people like complaining like, oh, this is your fault, like blaming their mothers, blaming not having a father. And it's like, For me, no. And then if I want to have a kid, I'm going to be really good at choosing their father so they don't grow like me, because at some point I have like hate towards my dad, and that was like consuming me. That was crazy. And then God helped me, and now I don't see it like that. I see it like a blessing that person didn't, though that person wasn't in my life. And then it wasn't easy at the same time. Growing up, just my mom and me, it was not easy at all. But like, it makes me the person that I am today.
Resilience is what I hear.
Resilience, and then being so independent. It's like, I'm just here by myself in this country. Like,
for how many years now? Like 5?
It's gonna be 5 in September. So it's like, wow. So that makes me, I relate to Joseph. Like, he went through a lot, and I've been through a lot, and I know there's more things to come. But that's not going. I'm not gonna take wrong decisions, choose a wrong partner, because I keep seeing that not only in my family but within my friends, because they don't want to be alone. Because no, the answer is no. Like, just waiting, God. If you have a list of things that you want for your life, and that person doesn't fill those, bye.
Stick to that. Stick to your non-negotiables. It is hard. In this world,
like, if I saw that my mom didn't choose a good partner in the past, I can learn from that. My mom wasn't good managing the money. I'm trying to be better at that, and I'm doing way better. And sometimes my mom, she questioned me like, "Oh, but life is just one." Like, oh, and I'm like, "Thank you, mommy. I'll talk to you tomorrow." It's like, even if I try to explain, she wouldn't understand, because nadie le enseñó a ella. Nadie le enseñó. So what I'm doing is foreign for her. It's like, what do you mean? I'm like, yeah, you gotta save money. What do you mean? She doesn't have savings. You know what I mean? So I feel like if I have kids, I'm not saying that I'm not gonna have. I'm just choosing right now to, think about it better. If at some point I have kids, it will be like a new generation for our family. Because if you go to Colombia and I show you my family, you're like, oh, you're so different. And that's why I left, because I always felt different. I always felt different, and that place was consuming me. So I have to move away from there.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. Resilient girl. Wow. I've learned so much from you knowing you only in the last 2 years or 3 years. And a lot of it has been the resilience. I don't want to get emotional. But in my case, similar to you, I grew up with a single mom as well. And I would always look up to her, and I still do, because she also had that resilience. But I was known as more of the, you're so emotional, you're so sensitive, why do you feel this way? So I learned to bottle up my emotions a lot. And, I saw being emotionally in tune, I saw that as a weakness. I think also coming from a Hispanic background, we're not really taught how to express ourselves. And, mostly things are just under the rug, and then time heals all wounds, and I don't agree with that. I do think that over time, yes, you do learn to kind of like let things go, but I think not really speaking about it really does affect you. And I think it comes out in, like, for me, I struggled with confidence for a long time. I struggled with going back to the not really having a father figure. I didn't really understand or know what true love looks like from either just a father figure or just even in dating life. Like, that affected me. I didn't pick the best partners in my past. And then, going back to my mom, she was very like, she put out, and I think it was just out of her experience. She didn't have a good experience with my father, right? So she was like, men just want one thing. You need to, protect yourself, which is in itself, like, big picture wise, yes, that there's truth in that. But then that kind of, for me, developed as fear. It kind of made me closed off, and it did develop in a sense of like, okay, I need to protect myself always, which is good. but I guess I'd never learned a balance, which God is working on. You know, God is working on that fear and like stuff like that. I think the main thing of like just being quiet and not speaking up. I think my mom was such a mama bear that she spoke up for me most of my life. So I didn't learn a lot of those things until adulthood of like defending myself, speaking up, being assertive, and having boundaries. That was foreign to me. You know, we talked about boundaries last season. But that's, again, it's like you do have to put a lot of that work, that inner work in yourself, with therapy, with, you know, with the church, with community, with service, you know, the list goes on. And like, I really am thankful to be in this, to be a believer, right? It's been almost 3 years for me. And every day, I'm just so thankful to be here, to be, to let go of my past because, you know, 26 years of my life, I lived in the world. You know, I didn't know the love of Jesus. I knew he was there, but I never, you know, had that relationship. So exactly. So I learned how to deal with a lot of my emotions in drinking and sex and, you know, just the way the world reacts to things and how they like cope. So a lot of it is new, but a lot of it is also feels like I've also been doing this my whole life. Like I feel like my prayer life has been there for years, but it's again, it's still something that I'm working on. But like that's just the love of the Holy Spirit, the truth and the promises that God gives us. It's real. So it's never too late to come to Christ. That's my moral of what, you know, what I'm sharing is you're never quote unquote like unholy enough. You're never like, you know, you've gone through so much things and God doesn't want you because you've done this. There's so many people in the Bible that we can talk about who's like Saul, now Paul, right? Like he killed Jews and he was one of the biggest prophets of the New Testament. He wrote most of the New Testament. Like how much wisdom is that, you know, coming from where he came from? Like God gave him those blessings, the transformation, the renewal.
Yeah, I feel like that's again the promises. When God promises you something, it's way bigger than you imagine. And he's an example. Like he started a movement. Well, Jesus did, but he like, ¿cómo se dice? Como que lo continuó. I love how Jesus like planted the seeds and then he's like, go, do it. And now we get to do the same because we forget that part. That we're supposed to be doing the same.
Doing the same as Jesus?
Yeah. Like
the same power and spirit that was with Jesus is available to us.
What about you and your traumas?
Great question. So, no, this is a great question. So there's been one question I've been asking myself in the last year because I've been able to visit Puerto Rico a lot. I was born there, but I didn't grow up there. I would travel when I was little, like once a year or so over there. But in this last year, I've been able to visit a lot more. You know, my mom lives there, and so she moved back a couple of years, and so the question has been like, what would life have been if I actually grew up here? You know, as compared to in the U.S. You know, and throughout that process in question, I've understood a little bit more of my father's story, my mother's story. My mother's side is from El Campo, tienen su finquita, igual, no, pobre, you know. And my dad's side, they were from the city, but they were from El Caserío. You know, we call it like the hood, you know, like over here. You know, and again, pobre. Like, there wasn't like any financial status or social status necessarily, you know, with either side of the family, but, you know, God brought them both together and they decided to come to the U.S. And what was interesting in that process, not only we came, but a lot of my dad's family came as well to the U.S., actually here in New York. And it's interesting again how that dynamic grew where they were able to come out, many of them out of poverty. But it was interesting, one thing that I noticed sometimes is the poverty mindset was still there. You know, and one thing again that I'm blessed, you know, one of the transformative things, you know, we were talking about not only coming to this country, but education. When my parents made that decision, I know my education, my quality of education rose significantly, not only be able to grow in my field and career, but my mental health, because there was a lot more resources. When I go back and I visit family, and I sometimes feel like I don't fit, not because I wasn't born there, but because again of some just things that I've learned along the way.
It's here.
Yeah, the mindset. And I tell my mom, I'm like, I love being over here. I love visiting. I don't know if I could live here though.
Same.
Like, because I'm one that I
It's a little
love.
slow. It's a
I
little
love
delayed.
people. I love to help people work on projects. And I was like, wow, I would love to do a couple projects, but the mindset there is very, very lento en ese sentido, And so for me, among education and my parents making that decision, I know it was helpful. Now, did it come with a set of challenges? Yes. One of the things that I noticed, and one of the things I've been trying to do different from my father is chasing success and chasing money. One of the things that was a downside when we moved over here, we were constantly moving because my dad would buy a house, see it as an investment, would go up in value, then he would sell it. So we would have to move. And he would do that over and over again. And we didn't have stability as much as, I think would have been healthy for me and my brother as well. So there was pros and cons, but I think this process now of, I think, just becoming more self-aware with age, but also, a través del Espíritu Santo, where I've understood these cycles can be broken. Is it easy? No.
It's a heavy burden. It's a heavy load.
Mm-hmm.
It is really heavy.
I have. I'll share this with you guys. It's interesting because me and my mom talked about this, about cycles, generational cycles, and all those things. And I have a little niece. She's 2, about to be 3 here soon. And I remember when she was really just a couple months old, like I literally prayed, and my sister-in-law, her, my niece's mother, she gave us a book. Like, I want you to write her little cards when she's older, she can read it. And literally, that's one of the things I put in that card as a prayer, like that this little girl would be a cycle breaker. All the things that her father, her uncles, her grandparents have experienced, that she may be able to learn from our experience, so she doesn't have to live through those difficulties.
So for me and my my still journey, like I'm on a journey again to like, it's, I don't want to call it like I already broke it, the cycle or the trauma, because things come back to my mind and I'm like and you were saying like their mentality back there, and it's like last night I was talking like about one of my Roman empires is my family. And I'm always thinking about it.
Of course.
Always. And it's like, I wish, it's not like they don't have the same opportunities as me. They wouldn't know what to do with them.
They don't have the tools, maybe.
Yeah, so my brother and me were the first one going into college. And already speak a second language for like nobody else in my mom's side of my family. Nothing, nobody's like, and then you hear like, no sé quiéncita está embarazada, and I'm thinking, how old is she? You know what I mean? So all of those things keep me like thinking all the time about them. But again, like even if the opportunities present to them, they wouldn't know what to do with them. So, for me, again, every single opportunity that presented to me, I just took it. Sometimes people ask, like, do you think coming here was the best decision? I'm like, I made it the best decision. I saw the opportunity. I took it as a sign. I'm like, I'm just going to do it. And I'm here. And I don't regret anything. And again, I think, like, like, what if I look back and que hubiera sido de esa Hellen que nunca dejó Colombia? And I'm thinking, I'm like, because I was 22 and I was already feeling like I didn't fit in there, and then I was like, I need to escape. I don't want to be.
That was the promptings, the Holy Spirit,
right?
To go on the path that He had.
So, and God promised to me, He was like, there is something for you bigger. And then I was in this career that I love, and I was like, why this doesn't feel fulfilled? Like I don't feel fulfillment from this. Why? This is my career, and now I don't feel that love anymore, and I'm not studying that anymore, and I'm not. Eso no me voy a dedicar a eso en mi vida, que fue la veterinaria, and it feels okay. And I'm discovering new things about me, and I was like, wow, like His plans are bigger than mine. So again, we want to give like a few advices from with those types of like thoughts comes to your mind, like, oh, this happened to my mom, like, I guess I have to be the same. It's because of my mom this. It's because I grew up without that.
Yeah.
No, like, anytime that type of toxic pensamientos, those toxic thoughts come to your mind, you have to, like, there's no excuse. Like Joseph, he didn't use, okay, so, la esposa de Potifar, she was pretty. That's for sure. Like, you cannot go there and conquistar a un ser de estos grandes que tenían un puesto súper alto con dinero just because being a woman. You have to be pretty. You have to be, because that's what moves the world right now. And then he said no. And we know how hard that's for men. I don't know because I'm not a man. But like, it must be hard. And he said no.
Mm-hmm.
So you can say no too anytime you have those type of like situations or toxic thoughts, or because it happened in your family, that's your destiny, is a no.
Mm-hmm.
You can always change all of that. And then also cleanse your space emotionally. I did that at a very young age, and it's specifically about my father.
Yeah.
I had so much hate. Like, that was the word, I hated him. And now he's just a human being existing somewhere that I don't have contact with him. But I'm so glad that I don't have hate anymore. And he never said sorry.
Yeah.
And like, it was me and God.
Yeah.
I was like, God, I don't want to feel this anymore. I understand it was the best for me. And I just want to let it go. And it happened. God healed me, healed that part of me. And then my relationship with humans, specifically women, got better because of that. Before, like, I didn't know how was supposed to be the relationship between a woman and a man.
Right.
And now I have more clear, and then that makes me more like hopeful about the future. And not because I don't want to say that. Never mind. So yeah, because I decided that all of those things wasn't gonna define me and take power over me and dictate my future. I am here feeling like I'm more mature, I'm healed, and then I'm more receiving to God's word. Anytime He talks to me, I can hear better than the way that I did before. Like, when I had all those feelings, all those thoughts, and when I was in that environment that I wasn't happy, I couldn't hear Him well. And now that I'm aware that I'm away from all that noise, from all those situations, I feel more like free mentally. And I feel like all those traumas are in the past. They come, I think about them, and if there's something that has to be fixed, I talk to God, or sometimes I go to therapy, and that helps a lot.
Yeah. Therapy definitely does help.
Yes.
Yeah.
Jesus in therapy.
Jesus in therapy and coffee. It helps get things done. So in addition to cleansing your space, trying to take action with those toxic thoughts perhaps, it's good to also like detox. And by that it's like not every thought and every not everything needs a solution. Like, you're allowed to feel how you feel. You're allowed to accept what's going on, right? And just acknowledge it and accept it. And like you did, let it go, because it didn't serve you. It was something that, yes, you went through, and yes, it happened to you, but it didn't, that doesn't have to be your identity. So, it's okay to feel these feelings. You're not wrong for feeling this way. You're not wrong for feeling angry. You're not wrong for having that hate, but you didn't keep that hate, right?
I think it's interesting. I think it's in Romans. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but it talks basically about taking every thought captive. Now, and we can think about it as a physical object. Like, we can take it captive, and we're going to experience, it's, wrestling us. We're literally going to feel that emotion. But are we taking it captive, or are we letting it take us captive? Oof. Are we leaning into the direction we want to go, or are we letting this emotion take us ultimately where it's destructive to us?
Yeah. just like that. You know, take the time you need. Like you said, some things you may have to fix, but let God take that burden from you. You don't have to carry it all on your own. And just, take the time you need. And what else do you need to do, Gabriel?
I think one of the things that I've learned the most regarding to resiliency, and basically resiliency is just bouncing back. Bouncing back. And I think in healthy families that I've seen, because I've worked with a lot of different students and families, is the kids who tend to not only bounce back in easier ways when they're younger, but later on in life are the ones that had people, whether it's parents or other loved ones, others that actually invest in them, but that can still be built in, that can still be learned later on, as you've shared with your story and bringing the cycles with your family. I think for me, it was definitely a learning process, through different experiences, broken relationships with other significant others or even family members, but understanding now that whatever that situation might have been, not only maybe what role I played in, because a lot of times, again, when you have that emotional immaturity, you're like, oh, it's all their fault, and you blame them. But I think part of that emotional growth, understanding, okay, I do have a part to play as well. What can I learn? What can I do better? And I think that's helped me now. So when I face maybe a difficult situation, again, whether it's with a family member or a colleague, whatever it is, I'm like, okay, this situation is not ideal. There's a misunderstanding, but I don't hate them. And I'm going to give them a benefit of the doubt. More than likely, they don't hate me.
Yeah.
El problema es la situación, no necesariamente la persona.
It's like they didn't have the capacity. It wasn't intentional, even though it was towards us. We did, feel that.
And so that gives me a little bit of empathy, because I'm like, I know in the past maybe I've been reactionary, and and I'm like probably didn't respond the best either. But I'm like, now I'm just like, okay, let me just be patient. Let me be patient with myself, porque a veces es difícil. Las personas a veces sí son difíciles, especialmente los que son más cercanas. Because
the ones we love the most.
One of the things I've noticed, those that were close to me, family members, especially parents, as I've been going through this process, it's sometimes most difficult with them, as you shared, que no entienden. Con la perspectiva de ellos, lo que aprendieron en su niñez es diferente de lo que yo estoy aprendiendo ahora. Tú sabes. Ahora lo bonito, and I'll kind of just show it on the opposite end. One beautiful thing that I noticed con mi mamá is, as I've been growing in my leadership and emotional growth, she's starting to be a part of that process too.
Same. We're all models.
And
that's how people learn.
From us.
That's how people learn.
This last year, I've been able to grow in leadership and get different certifications under my belt. And again, it's a God thing, because I don't even know how I can afford this. But some of those research I started sharing with my mom. She's starting to be more active in that, and ella es una where I know growing up she was not one, unless she was mad. Hispanic moms, y'all know, when they get mad, like chancla pa fuera. But when she wasn't mad, she was more como se dice, more quiet, more reserved. And one thing that I learned from her, and as I'm learning of myself, is because of that confidence, that aspect of knowing that she's worthy. So that's one thing, we've been able, I think, to understand in our journey together. Even though she's much older now, we understand, again, not only through the scripture, through the Spirit, but looking back at our own stories, like, we went through these situations, others might have hurt us, but that doesn't mean that we're not worthy. We don't have any value in it, and deserve love and affection and all that. And so that's been beautiful to see her, in her journey and healing, as well as mine, because again, we learn from our parents. I learned that from her, but now I'm unlearning it as she's unlearning it as well.
It's a union. We're all in this together, guys.
Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
This is the end. It was a good episode.
I hope you guys tune in.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, guys. Make sure to share this. Make sure to leave a rating, please, on Spotify. By this moment, we should be on Apple by this. So you'll see us on Apple Podcasts. You'll see us on YouTube as well. So please share, like, subscribe.
Thank you.
All the things. Thank you, guys. Ciao.
We gotta do behind the scenes selfies.